Episode of Better Humans at Work. I'm thrilled to be joined today with Shuang Pui. Thank you so much for coming on today.
Thank you for having me. I'm very excited to be talking to you today.
Me too. So, a little bit about Dr. Pui's background. She's a leader in people analytics, so ex-Meta, ex-Mercer, ex-professor with a Ph.D. in industrial organizational psychology. She brings deep expertise in leveraging data to enhance the employee experience and drive people strategy. She led the revamp of their performance management system, developed robust measurement strategy for talent to drive the people org's operating rhythm, and improved manager effectiveness by embedding upward feedback into the performance process. Shuan is passionate about turning insights into actionable strategy and creating a more human-centered workplace. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. It was a very good introduction. I have to say, I feel impressed.
I'm super impressed. So, we share a background PhD in organizational psychology.
We
How
do.
did you end up in the people analytics space starting as an I-O psychologist?
Well, I ended up in it by chance. So I actually started off as a professor, and I thought I wanted to go into academia. So I, was teaching psychology. I created a program on industrial organizational psychology at a bachelor's program level. Most of those kind of programs tend to be at a master's and PhD level. And then I decided I wanted to go into the industry and apply, what I know into companies. And I started off my industry experience at Safeway. And at that time, people analytics wasn't even a field yet. It wasn't even called people analytics. I was just mostly focused on assessments, evaluating training assessments, and then leading employee engagement surveys at Safeway. And so I just stumbled into it, and it was a small team because, they didn't know what it was, a team of 4 people trying to support 250,000 employees, which is huge, and it's unheard of right now.
Wow. And so from Safeway, where did you end up next? And how did you stay on that people analytics trail?
Yeah, from Safeway, I decided I wanted to try external consulting for a little bit to see what, the other side of the world looks like. So I joined, at that time, a boutique firm called Sorota, and they eventually got acquired by Mercer. In that space, I was supporting companies with deploying and administering life cycle surveys. The bulk of it is employee engagement surveys, but we also did, some 360s, some onboarding, recruiting surveys, as well as exit surveys. So trying to span the entire employee life cycle.
Got it. And then what did your work look like at Meta?
At Meta, I was mostly on the translator side of people analytics. So I was hired on as an analytics business partner. So my role was mostly to understand the business leaders' needs and what kind of business problems they're trying to solve, translate that into some sort of data research scope project, and look at what kind of data we have internally as well as externally to help answer any questions that they may have, figure out what types of decisions, policy changes, program implementation that they needed to implement into their company, and provide them with evidence-based, data-driven type of solutions recommendations. So we look at data. I try to come up with the story to tell around the data to help inform those policy changes, program changes that they needed to make.
Got it. And then we have a lot of people from HR and DEI that tune in to these episodes. I feel like sometimes people analytics can sort of feel like a black box. Like it seems like this mysterious, kind of overwhelming, application of data and people work. What would you recommend, for people who wanted to start getting more up to speed with people analytics, and how can they just get started incorporating people analytics into the work?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I would say it's not necessarily a black box. When people think about data, they get overwhelmed, right? Like they're thinking big data, very advanced analytics, but it doesn't have to be that way. Even if you have a small organization, or if you're the only person who feel like, oh, now I want to do something a little bit more evidence-based, you can do it. And with AI now you can probably do a lot of it yourself without knowing a lot about data. I would say, listen to employees, because data is just basically getting some information. It can be conversations, it can be just open-ended comments that you see within a survey. It can also be just Slack channels where you see people providing some unhappiness around like their workplace and what they need out of their managers, their companies. It doesn't have to be very big survey-like kind of data, right? So look at what existing data you have within your own company, and then figure out, what are the pain points? What do you see people complaining about? What are they saying they need out of their companies, out of you, out of their managers? And then try to do something about it. The other thing I would just advise is, try to join any kind of meetups. Most big cities right now do have a people analytic meetup group, and you can search them on LinkedIn and try to see if you can join one of those events. In fact, last week I had organized and planned the Bay Area People Analytic meetup, and it was a huge event. We had around 75 people. I know there are other cities where they have much smaller groups, but it's a little bit more friendly and very inviting. And we always welcome people outside of people analytics. You don't have to be a professional in order to join those events, and you can kind of network and get to know what they're doing.
I love what they've been doing with the Society for People Analytics and providing, toolkits for having these local meetups. I really think it's really great, how they're building that community across the country and the world. So,
Yeah.
where are you based?
I'm based in the San Francisco Bay Area.
Okay. So it was a Bay Area People Analytics event. That's
Yes.
wonderful. So I wanted to talk a little bit about applications of people analytics. How have you used people analytics to revamp performance management systems?
Yeah. So we at Meta, we had, kind of recently revamped our performance system. And the way we started was just looking at existing data. We always do a survey right after performance process just to get a sense of what people are experiencing, what are pain points, how much time people are spending in the process. And from there, we were able to already kind of glean what types of things that we needed to do in order to improve the process. One of the biggest pain points for people were time spent, how much time they were spending writing self-reviews, peer reviews, how much time managers were taking, doing downward reviews, having calibration meetings with other managers. And so from there, we decided time spent was one of the things that we wanted to tackle, which is why we were able to kind of just pinpoint exactly like which parts of the process we wanted to kind of reduce the time spent, and then work on creating the process to make it a little bit more lightweight. One way that we have done that was, having word limits on what people can write in their self-reviews and peer reviews, just to give them guidance, not necessarily to put them a very hard boundary around it, but just say, hey, most people actually do write only about 50 words, in peer reviews. So you don't have to write this lengthy thing. You can just, write something a little bit more concise, but, give specific and observable behaviors that can help others.
I love that example. And I think a really important piece that gets left out of the people analytics conversation is the change management that needs to happen afterwards. It's not just data for data's sake, but how can we take what we learn and, as you said with this performance management example, change the process based on that feedback to make it better. So I love that. You've also done work with embedding upward feedback. What is upward feedback and how does that relate to people analytics?
Sure. Upward feedback is just basically, providing feedback from direct reports to the manager and to the leaders about ways that they can improve. It can be very behavioral, like having one-on-ones with me or providing me with, good actionable feedback, to things like skills. Are you able to create good structure and give me good direction, provide enough context for me to do my job well? The idea around upward feedback is a lot of times managers get into the role because they are great ICs, but they're not necessarily trained well as managers in how to lead a team well. They don't know what they should be doing in order to improve. And so output feedback just gives them that information and signal to say, hey, you're doing well in this, these areas, and you're not doing well in these areas. Out of the areas that you're not doing well, what can you do to improve? And the things that you're doing well, keep doing them or keep doing better, right, in those areas.
How do you handle employees being worried about their feedback getting back to their manager and them getting reprimanded for that?
Yeah, the way that we handle that is by using thresholds. So we typically want to make sure that there's a minimum of 3, 4, whatever that threshold is. The different companies have different levels of thresholds that they like to use. In general, the best practice is between 3 to 5. So if a manager has 3 to 5 direct reports and they have responses from those 3 to 5 direct reports, we aggregate the results to share with them. And if there are any open-ended comment type of feedback, we also aggregate them and anonymize them. So we make them confidential. We remove names out of it, just so that the manager still gets feedback, but it's not able to identify who's providing the feedback to them.
Got it. Got it. So having those thresholds to make sure there's enough people that they can't be identified.
Right.
Got it. And then when it comes to designing human-centered, insight-driven workplaces, what role does people analytics play in that?
Yeah, I believe that people analytics can play a huge role in every aspect of the employee lifecycle. And it starts from way before they join the company. It starts from the recruiting side of things. So we can look at recruiting data to look at any survey feedback or even just recruiter feedback. A lot of times recruiter sources are the ones that interact the most with candidates outside. And so they hear firsthand, what are the experiences people are, facing, what are the pain points that they have. And from there, we can try to improve processes based on feedback that we're hearing and data that we're collecting within the process. So we start from recruiting, and then once someone comes into the company, there's an onboarding process. Typically, most companies would have a survey to kind of gauge, how well the onboarding is going, how quickly are people getting on-ramped into their role in order to perform really well on their job. And there are ways to collect data around that. And from there, we'll look at the employee engagement. Are people engaged? Are they interacting with people within their own role and outside of their immediate team to be able to do their jobs well? And once they get to a time when they have to get evaluated on the performance management process, there are ways to take a look at, are they doing well on their jobs? Are they performing on par, meeting expectations? If not, can we give them feedback around how they can improve in order to do better? But that's also a moment where they can talk about their bigger career growth, right? Do you want a promotion? Do you want to stay within the team? Can you move around and laterally or into another team or another role to help contribute and grow your career within the company, to get them a little bit more engaged within their employee experience and their own career development within that company. And then as employees are exiting the company, that's where we can collect a little bit more information, right? Mm-hmm. Why are you leaving the company? Are you being pushed out, or are you being pulled out of the company? So there are push and pull factors that we can collect data on. An example of a push factor could be, I don't have good managers, and they are not developing me well. They are not creating a great environment, an inclusive environment for me. And so I'm leaving the company. An example of a pull factor would be, hey, I got another job somewhere else. It's a much better pay. It's a much higher level. And so I'm going to go to that company because it's giving me that career growth.
Got it. So people analytics applies to the entire employee life cycle, collecting that data and using it to have insights and make changes. Thinking about the fact that a lot of our viewers are in the DEI space, what is the intersection between people analytics and diversity, equity, and inclusion?
It's everywhere. When I was at Meta, we embedded DEI analytics into all of our people analytics work. So
Mm.
everything we looked at, there's always a DEI lens to it. We always do a cut on DEI groups to see if there are differences in responses in survey, differences in performance rating, promotion rates.
Mm.
And that's kind of a way for us to figure out where we can improve our processes, where we can improve the employee experience for our employees. So I think DEI and people analytics go hand in hand. It has to intersect everywhere. We always have to put the DEI lens over everything.
I have a funny story. So whenever I premiered the title of the book, Inclusalytics, on LinkedIn, I had all these people analytics folks commenting how excited they were for the book, and they can't wait to have it, purchase it and dig into it. And I was freaking out because I was like, no, this isn't for people analytics folks, it's for DEI folks. But then I realized, the same way that I was making the case for DEI leaders to use more data, I was similarly making the case for people analytics folks to think about DEI metrics and be a DEI partner. And so it was a good book for them after all. But I was like, oh no, it's the wrong audience. I should have named it something different.
And that's why, so now like they should go hand in hand, That's why a
Good.
lot of people, analytic folks, are also interested in the book. And I've read your book too, and I love the part about, the difference between mentorship and sponsorship and allyship. And there are research and data to support that sponsorship and allyship is a much more effective way of, growing people's career and in order to, get their promotions compared to a mentorship program.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, we are almost at time. So, for those watching out there that want to start using more people analytics in their work, what would be 3 recommendations you would have for that audience?
Well, the first recommendation is to look at your existing data, see if within your own company whether there's someone who is data savvy enough to for you to partner with to look at that data, see how you can translate that into any kind of strategy or changes or anything that you're trying to do to improve your employee experience. The second, I would say, would be to join some sort of community within people analytics, whether it's a meetup group, whether it's the Society for People Analytics, and just getting the resources and read a little bit more about it. And the third could be controversial. I would say use AI more to see if they can do the deep research for you to collate any kind of evidence-based information for you to use to apply to your own space and in your own company.
Great pointers. Thank you so much. Thanks for coming on today and sharing your expertise with us. For those that want to reach out or maybe want to work with you, how do you recommend them getting in touch?
Reach out to me on LinkedIn. My name is kind of on the stream right here. You can just search for me, reach out to me. I'm happy to always have conversations, connect with everyone. And if you're in the Bay Area, feel free to join one of our meetups.
Wonderful. Well, thank you for all you do to help us be better